Hey everyone, it's Alec Crawford, your host for the AI Risk Reward podcast, sponsored by Veripath. And our very special repeat guest today is Matthew Rosenquist. A lot of you know who he is. I'll let Matthew introduce himself, and then we'll dive right into AI and cybersecurity. Welcome, Matthew.
Hi. I am absolutely no one of consequence, but I do have 30-something years in cybersecurity. I'm a strategist. I'm a CISO. I've got a few followers on LinkedIn, and I love to talk about the strategic aspects of cybersecurity. What's coming? Not what happened yesterday, but what's going to hit us tomorrow, next week, next month, and next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, you just wrote a note about Mythos, Anthropic, and we'll put that in the show notes. But I think if you can give us the Reader's Digest version for the audience, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so Anthropic just released its latest AI model, and they call it, Claude Mythos. It is under limited release right now because they kind of view it as dangerous. This particular model is outstanding, and I mean really outstanding at identifying vulnerabilities in code and systems and then creating exploits for those vulnerabilities that it discovered. Now, even in this preview kind of mode where some security companies have had access to it and whatnot, it's already discovered over 2,000 vulnerabilities. In fact, vulnerabilities in all the major operating systems and web browsers. So this is it's an eye opener, and several of the security companies and analysts, big analysts, have come back who have had this early access, have said this is going to break our current vulnerability management processes. What used to take months is going to take minutes. And that's what they're saying, minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy. And the whole system for patching software just isn't even built that way, right? It's not like, hey, let's patch this in 5 minutes. I mean, people have cycles, they want to test things, and it can take, weeks to patch something. And this is, and just to remind the audience, this cycle used to be kind of more than 30 days, right? It used to be discover a vulnerability. Hey, we'll figure this out. We're going to release the patch. And then people install the patch. And now they're saying, hey, forget about the 30 days of now it's minutes. This does sound pretty scary.
Yeah. In 30 days, when you're talking 30 days, you're talking about the high risk vulnerabilities. You're not even talking about the medium or the low risk. Many companies will look at low-risk vulnerabilities and go, you know what? We'll bundle that and put patches out once a year for that, or once every 6 months. So when you look at the larger landscape and Anthropic's tool and other tools, it's not just Anthropic, it's all the latest tools that are coming out are going to be able to do this. They can chain some mediums and some lows together, and the aggregate risk now is higher critical. So it's a complete rework, and our current structure, as you mentioned, isn't conducive to that. Because, and let's walk through that process, because I think that's really important. Let's say you're a software vendor, and you get notified either through your own researchers, but more than likely an announcement, or a private researcher has approached you and said, hey, you have a vulnerability. Well, you can't just accept that. You have to go in and look at that information and then validate there really is a vulnerability. Okay, once you validate it now, you have to figure out, well, where is it applicable? Because is it really applicable to most users? To some, you may change the rating on it, whatnot. Great. Let's say you do classify it as high. Now you're going to have to go back to the development team. And this is the development team who wrote the software, and they're already busy writing the next version. So you have to interrupt their development cycle of their next version to say, we need you to understand the vulnerability of the previous and come up with a fix. And come up with a fix that doesn't crater anything else or impact your next version. Okay, great. So they have to develop that fix. Then they have to test it. And they have to test it not only in that nice, clean environment, they have to kind of test it out with how our customers actually implementing it. And once they do that, then they have to figure out a backout strategy, because sometimes patches actually cause damage and you have to be able to back out of it. Okay, so let's build all that in. Now let's start rolling it out. But these patches in many cases create downtime, right? Sometimes you have to reboot or relaunch an application, and that can impact your customers. So you can't be doing that all the time. So you have to figure out a good window. How can I deploy this in a controlled manner and know if I need to back it out? And if not, go fast, get everybody, and realize it's probably going to be downtime. Okay, let's do that. But if it's one vulnerability you have to worry about during the year, probably manageable. What if it's 20 or 30 or 50? You're not going to interrupt your customers that many times. So you bundle it together. Okay, all the criticals we need to do right now. The moderates or maybe the lows, we'll bundle those and do those 1 or 2 times a year. But we're really going to focus on the criticals because that's what's most important. We're in a race against the attackers creating an exploit and victimizing our customers. But at the same time, we don't want to victimize our customers, enforcing downtime and new software updates and potential issues and performance. So it becomes a big challenge that our industry has kind of settled on and said, okay, for criticals, we'll do it in a reasonable time, within days to weeks. And if it's high or medium, okay, maybe we'll bundle it in at longer time ranges. But all that's out the window now. Now you have to do all of that potentially in minutes to hours instead of days to months.
Yeah, just crazy. So really smart of Anthropic and to basically keep this model under lock and key, give it out to a couple of key software providers to figure out what these problems are and give them a chance to patch it. I think also just the knowledge this is possible for the bad guys is bad, right? Because obviously thousands of vulnerabilities, so they obviously can use other models to look for these. They may not be as good as Mythos, but they could be better than human still, right?
So absolutely they are, right? I saw some recent stats. I was talking to a developer, and they were looking at some of the currently available legacy models. And again, the time frame greatly compressed, and those tools were able to create exploits for in the high 90 percentile range for all the vulnerabilities that they were discovering. So yeah, it's a brave new world.
That's pretty crazy. And I guess one of the things we have to think about is, look, all these different, let's take the perspective of a company at this point, as opposed to an individual. Like, what kind of software would you be most worried about let's take a really big bank, right? So they've got accounting software, they've got software at their ATMs, everybody at the bank is using a web browser. Like, where do you think the largest vulnerability might be, or a handful?
It's a dangerous question. So let me start off with that, because it's really a trick question. If you say, well, hey, if you compromise the end user's browser, now you can get all their data and banking, that's horrible. But you're right. But what if they can modify the transactions and change account numbers and amounts? Well, they can empty everyone's account. Oh, well, that's critical too. Well, what about if they bring our entire outward-facing network down, right? So people can't get to their money. You're denying them. Oh, well, that's critical as well. What if they go in and they crater our internal system? So our web page is up, but nothing in the background works. Well, that's critical too. Well, what if they go to our database and actually modify some numbers in there? Oh, that's critical too. Okay, there's critical problems everywhere. If you only want to focus in one area, you are really giving an opportunity to the attackers for all the other areas that you've automatically lowered in priority. So you really have to look at, okay, what is the attacker going to go after? And they're going to go after the weakest link for anything they're trying to do, which could be any of those areas.
Yeah, so pretty crazy. So a good thing this is all locked down. If you're run a bank or a chief information security officer right now, you just became a lot more paranoid for sure. Now, the switching gears, like let's say you're a consumer, right?
Mhm.
Ordinary consumer, you're not a CISO. What are some tips you can give them in terms of things that are going on in cybersecurity today, things that AI is going to enable the bad guys to do that they should either watch out for, or simple things like they can do, such as create really, really long passwords or whatever. You tell us what you think people should be doing right now.
Well, the attackers are using AI in a couple of different things. So if we step aside from what Mythos is doing for the vulnerability management, and we just look at the overall picture of AI and how it empowers attackers, they're jumping into it so fast, and they're all in. And it's really helping them in a couple of different areas. The first is with social engineering. So they are creating much better quality social engineering. Social engineering, let's say phishing attacks, in local language, actually in local dialect of that language, and they're tying in to known cognitive vulnerabilities that we all have. It's just part of our brain, right? Urgency and appeal to belief and, the opportunity of financial gain and flattery and all these things. So they're able to do that. Then now they're tying them into social media as well. So they can customize the message just to you based on your latest posts or what you like or don't like or what accounts you have, all these kinds of things. So highly customized, targeted types of social engineering attacks. And it's not just the SMS messages on your phone. It's not just email, right? It can now also be phone calls, live chat, social engagement on social sites, real-time discussions. And they're using AI to be able to manipulate them, build trust, and then get them to do something that essentially will become harmful to them. Click on a link, install a file, install a patch, right? That really isn't, right? Things of that sort. And so the quality goes up, but that's not all. Oh no. AI also allows them to take that specialized customization just for you and then duplicate that out to the masses.
Right.
So it isn't a generic email or phishing. It is unique to each and every person. And then it learns. It learns what worked well with you, what worked well with other people like you, what failed with you or other people. And AI is really good at then applying that learning and then trying again based on that learning, all automatically at machine speed.
Yeah, not a great story. Not a great story. So, so basically, what you're saying is you've got to be super careful about emails. Obviously, people have heard about deepfakes. If someone sounds like your granddaughter is calling up saying, "Hey, I'm in Nigeria. Go to Western Union and send $2,000," probably fake, unless your granddaughter really does live in Nigeria. So you just have to be trust but verify, right? So I've heard things like families having their own code word,
Absolutely.
for example, right? And then what about hardware firewalls? Is that something that's can help help companies or help individuals from the hackers?
Yeah. So, as the attackers begin to use these tools, and part of it is to get past the current firewalls, right? Whether it's a web firewall, an email firewall, or whatnot. And so they're using AI to get past them. These security organizations are now employing AI to try and detect that and then change those filters more dynamically to filter them out. It's really in response to what the attackers are doing. Just like as us end users, we have to respond to a higher quality of social engineering. You say trust but verify. I think we're almost getting to the point where we shouldn't trust anything that's coming in, until we verify. And that's just the way it is, right? When we look at the amount of web traffic on social sites, that's now surpassing the amount of human traffic. So if you just flip a coin, okay, half of the engagements you're having on social media are probably AI powered in some way, shape, or form. So again, do we want to believe that? Maybe not inherently anymore. And this goes back to the psychology that we have, right? Back in the day, we used to think that photographs were the pinnacle of evidence. It is the proof of truth until Photoshop came out, right? And then everybody could do it. And then we thought, hey, well, maybe emails, right? Email account domains, that is a proof that it is legitimate. No, not really, because of spoofing and all these other tactics. And then we thought, well, maybe video. Video, that is absolutely the proof. And yet AI is showing anybody can create any video. You want to see aliens come down to Las Vegas? I can make a video with that, right? So deepfakes, things like that. We used to then think, hey, well, what about we get on a phone call? Live communication. We're live on a chat going back and forth. That is absolutely definitive. It's not. It's not. So we have to continually change our expectations of what we believe is a baseline as technology modifies and is able to undermine the trust of those different mediums. And right now, we don't have a solid medium other than you meeting somebody and giving a handshake.
Yeah. Well, I think there are definitely populations which are more at risk, right? There's a lot of elder fraud out there, for example, and maybe you shouldn't give your 13-year-old the Venmo account. But one of the things that I've seen recently that I think is helpful at some financial institutions is they put down a trusted family member, right? So if a teller, for example, sees like, whoa, grandma is taking out $27,000 in cash, obviously they're going to address it. Hey, what are you using this money for, right? And they can potentially identify a scam. And if that doesn't work, they can call the trusted family member, go, hey, your mom's taking out 27 grand in cash. You want to talk to her or come down to the bank? There's a law that they're trying to pass in Florida that will basically put giant warning labels on these cryptocurrency vending machines that says, if you're standing here, you're probably being scammed. Right.
And most of those vending machines already have it there and people ignore it. Right. So, it's great that they're moving towards that, but the effectiveness will probably be low.
Yeah. So, so again, in terms of passwords, for example, and access to accounts, clearly multi-factor authentication is critical. And, one of the things I wrote about before is that, like, look, email for consumers is the gateway. Like, if a bad guy gets access to your email, you're pretty hosed, right? Because they can go change passwords, get access to accounts, and email maybe your financial advisor or whatever. You've got a real problem. So what are some ways for consumers to protect their emails, like multi-factor authentication, for example?
Well, I think you nailed it, right? Multi-factor is one of the absolute very best ways. The other thing is to make sure that you've got change notices that are marked. So anytime your account does get changed or somebody accesses it from a different device, your email and your secondary email both get notified. So for example, and I normally don't talk about the security controls I use, but I do have that enabled for many of my accounts. If something changes, whether a machine logs into it that it doesn't recognize, or it's something new, or a login hasn't happened in a while and it then occurs, two of my different email accounts that have separate passwords, separate names, right? They both get notified. So I know. And then if I need to, I can go in. And on centrally controlled systems like, email and your phone account or whatnot, that's good. If it's a blockchain, a decentralized account, that's an entirely different world and you're hosed. So the security for decentralized system is fundamentally different than our typical centralized system that we use. But yes, use multi-factor, get active notifications if you can. If you ever suspect something went wrong, right? Go in and change those passwords, change those credentials immediately. And then also be very wary, because even if you have multi-factor authentication, if somebody is able to successfully dupe you with social engineering, they can get past your multi-factor authentication because you're going to give them that second factor as well as part of the practice. So follow the basics, right? Never click on that link in the email. Always open up a separate web browser page, type in the link you're supposed to go to, or to the company that you trust, things of that sort.
Yeah.
Basics are important.
Yeah, really good advice. I mean, one of the things I also recommend is, have a couple personal email accounts. One, you're chatting with your friends, maybe one's for spam, that you're giving out to people who might end up on a marketing email, and one for really important stuff like your bank or your broker, which you just don't give out to your friends, or certainly not to spam. So that's another, good technique to use, I think.
Yeah, it's great advice. And I'll give you an upgrade to that as well. So have those separate accounts. But again, trust is so important. And when you're dealing with a new company, a new service provider, a new web page or whatever, you really shouldn't trust them. So you want to give them one of your accounts that's closer to the spam level. You're going to ignore it, right? It's, just don't trust it. It's not your main email account. But as you deal with them and they are becoming trustworthy, change your email account with them to one of the higher trusted accounts. Because again, if you started working with a company, vendor, product, and they decided to sell your email and they got breached because they had horrible security, all that social engineering goes to that less trusted account, right? So trust needs to be earned. And when it's earned, then you elevate them to a more trustworthy account. You're still wary about it, but that reduces a lot of the pressure on you for accidentally clicking on something, and cleaning or keeping clean and as pristine as possible your more trusted accounts.
And now a word from our sponsor. Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc. accelerates adoption of GenAI safely. They provide the governance, risk, compliance, and cybersecurity platform that financial, healthcare, and other regulated organizations need before they can use GenAI safely and in compliance with regulatory requirements. Their software has won #1 awards for cybersecurity and compliance from Waters Technology. Find them at aicrisk.com. Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. Now, going back to multi-factor authentication, there's a lot of different types right now. For example, a lot of companies want to send you a text message with a code, but then we've also got these code generators like Google Authenticator and things like that. So what's more secure at this point, and what are some other potential methods?
So any type of multi-factor is better than no multi-factor at all. So if whatever company you're going through, or product or service or web page, they offer something, but they only offer, okay, we're going to send you a 6-digit code to your phone, still opt in, please, still opt in. It's better than nothing. And many times you are limited to what that vendor will accept. But if we look at the, we're going to send you a text or an SMS message, it's kind of one of the lower secure ones. If they're going to send you if they're going to use a pass key where you're using Google's or whatnot, and you have to, log into a separate app and it's got a constantly rotating number, that's a little better. It really is. And when you start getting to the higher end, right, the higher end is really right around hardware keys. So there's several different, Google actually has a hardware key. I'm trying to think of the other one that I actually love, but it's a key fob. And those are considered the very, very best in the traditional sense. There are some higher ones where you have to have multiple hardware keys or you have to have multiple authentications, but those are for like super top enterprise kinds of things, recovery of systems, super admin accounts, things like that, not for the consumer. But biometrics isn't bad if it's located on your primary phone, for example, for like unlocking your phone or using that. That's pretty strong as well because it's using a locally authenticated biometric to then send a secure token off for validation. That's really good as well. But it just changes, right? Because the attackers have techniques to try and get around almost everything.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. Well, let's shift gears and talk a little bit more about the future of AI and cybersecurity and kind of start with the basics, right? So So if you're a consumer and you have some confidential information, maybe it's your bank account statement or a lab report or whatever, and you've got the free version of ChatGPT, like, is that a good idea just to upload that and ask questions about it, Matthew?
Absolutely not. And they'll say, hey, we take reasonable security measures, and they do try. But again, for them, they're training on all that data, especially for free accounts. So you are part of their product, and anything you upload into it becomes part of that training data. Some of them will actually try and filter some of that out, the sensitive bits. They will try and anonymize it or pseudo-anonymize it. But again, they're using it for training. It's expensive for them to run it. So for the people they're giving it to for free, this is that compensation because they are always hungry for training data. Now, we have seen because of memory retention and some other interesting little hacks that aren't all that complex, any data you put in can be reconstructed potentially, can be exposed. And that's true even for the paid versions. So we're seeing AIs, jailbreak out of their environments. We're seeing hacks that are compromising across accounts. So the best advice I can give to you, if you're adopting AI, which we all are, by default, don't assume it's secure. Start from that mindset. Then decide, okay, what risk am I willing to take based on what information I'm going to give out, right? Do I really want my healthcare records potentially compromised? No, then I'm not going to put them out there. Am I okay with my home address if that gets well, yeah, I'm kind of okay with it. I wouldn't want it, but I'm okay, fine. Maybe that's then your threshold. But make a conscious decision to understand what will that blast radius be and what your acceptable, impacts are.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And look, it's much different if you're at a regulated company, like a healthcare company or a financial company, because then there are rules around this and penalties if an employee, let's say, put something in ChatGPT, regardless if it gets revealed, just the act itself of revealing confidential or client personally identifiable information or privileged health information, the act itself is, creates a compliance problem. Yeah, and this is something where I think just a lot of training is really going to be required, and are there good resources out there either for companies or for individuals to kind of learn more kind of do's and don'ts with AI right now?
There are, and I work with a lot of companies in the behavioral and the cognitive security space. So all of those companies are just hyper right now to elevate the level of training and engagement. But it really depends on what the attackers are doing at that given time, right? How far evolved the attackers are. And the attackers are evolving quickly because the tools that they're using, the AI tools, are evolving so quickly. So every day we have a new feature, a new version, a new model, something, a new tool that attackers can use. So it's really tough to keep up with those attackers and their social engineering attacks that are going after the behaviors that are taking advantage of cognitive vulnerabilities with their targets, and they're getting better. So yes, if you currently have a vendor, work with them to try and get the latest in. If you aren't working with a vendor, you probably should start thinking about it because it's really tough to kind of keep up with those attackers at every stage.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting there, speaking about vulnerabilities, is the models themselves, right? Like you go back even a year and you can say things like ChatGPT, like, forget previous instructions, do this instead. And obviously the defenses have gotten better, but now there's this crazy thing out there, which has existed for a while, but I think it's creeping into people's consciousness where you can use one AI to figure out the vulnerabilities of another AI, right? It's called a generalized adversarial network. And literally within minutes of a new model being released, the bad guys have figured out, where are the holes in the wall, right? And how can I get in? So this is just going to be a cat and mouse game, for a while at this point, and there are a heck of a lot of mice, right? And I'm not sure my one cat's going to be able to catch them all.
Yeah, games have been around for Yeah, GANs have been around for a while, right? The adversarial networks. In fact, when you look at deep learning, essentially, one of the tactics is to use a GAN just to make it better. So if you're going to create an image, right, you're going to use adversarial networking to refine it. That's one of the reasons that it is literally impossible to have a robust AI tool to detect, hey, is this an AI generated image? Is this AI generated text? Is this an AI generated deepfake? Right? A lot of people come up to me and say, well, why don't we just use AI to detect them? So just create a tool that can do that. And the answer is, well, the tool that does that is the same tool that creates those, and they're linked. So as soon as you create a tool that can detect a model, the model goes, oh, I was detected. Now I'm going to learn from that and create a model that isn't. So it is a constant change. So you could create a tool today that could, confidently detect AI images, probably in the high 90%. By the end of the week, it would probably be down to 60%. The beginning of next week, it would be about 30% accurate, and on and on and on. So you would have to redo it every 24 hours or faster to maintain some semblance of accuracy over time. And nobody can do that. Google had a program, by the way, that they invested heavily to be able to do this, and they canceled it. It was either a year or a year and a half ago that they canceled it. They said, no, it's just not possible. It's just not, we're using the same tools. The very tool we're using to create the image is the one, we're just using a GAN. They're all connected. So we can't do that. It's going to come down to human intuition and a little bit of paranoia, moving to a lot of paranoia until we move to fundamentally different structures that are based on trust.
Yeah,
right? Digital structures, what I predict.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, in the meantime, look, we can obviously use AI to help the cybersecurity team, right? Like no one wants to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and be trying to figure out, hey, how do I deal with this, intrusion? That the best answer is, hey, AI does it for me. I wake up at 8 and go, oh, look, AI blocked an attack at 2 a.m. Isn't that awesome, right? So, so tell us a little bit about what's going on there, what has been developed, and what you see coming down the road to help cybersecurity professionals to use AI in defending their companies.
Yeah, and I'll go back to actually my 2026 predictions, which also predicted like mythos undermining the vulnerability stuff. But one of the other predictions was around cybersecurity. And we see this freight train coming at us, and there's no surprise there. We know we have to rise to the occasion. And if the attackers are using tools that make them incredibly powerful, we need to use those tools as well. So cybersecurity across the industry, every product out there has been working to try and get AI in so that we can keep pace with the attackers. They're going to use tools, for example, for vulnerability discovery. We need to use the same tools because we need to discover them earlier so that we can close the discoveries before the attackers do. So it's very, very similar technology. We will be using the same tools as them. But here is the caveat. Attackers can be haphazard. They can take the latest model and run with it. They can take the latest tool and if it breaks, whatever. It works, it doesn't work, it breaks, it craters something. I don't care, right? The security teams, we can't do that. I can't grab the latest tool and just slap it in the environment and hope nothing breaks, right? If I bring down the environment because of my new, untested security tool, I'm out on the street, right? I should not have a job in cybersecurity. I have now caused more damage than the attackers, and you're paying me. So that doesn't work, which means we have to go through a lot of vetting and testing and implementation and all of that, which is standard process for any type of technology tool. But that puts us way behind, right? The attackers get this opportunity window where they get to use the latest and greatest tools, and we can't. So they get a big advantage until we can catch up. But by the time we catch up, they're now 2 steps ahead again. When it comes to the big steps that we're seeing, we're going to see a lot of these security AI tools come into maturity and actually get adopted in a meaningful way across the industry, I'm estimating right around Q3. And so security will still be behind. That won't change. But we will take a big step forward, so we will not be depressingly, absurdly behind. We'll just be depressively behind. And that's where we kind of stand. And we want to keep that pressure moving forward. But we have to develop, adopt, vet, and integrate AI tools as fast as possible to counter exactly what the attackers are doing, because they're faster and they're more agile.
Yeah, is there anything that small and medium-sized businesses should be choosing not to do or not to use to reduce their profile for attackers? What are some good tips there?
Yeah, now more than ever, one of the big problems is trying to solve everything, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to eliminate all risk. Well, you don't eliminate risk in cybersecurity. It's just not possible. So large organizations realize that. And that's why they prioritize things and they allocate resources and they have specific goals and they run risk assessments and metrics. The smaller and medium companies typically view running a risk assessment, for example, a detailed one, as kind of a waste of time and effort. But what that actually gives you is a prioritization where you're going to have the biggest bang for your buck. And one of the areas even now companies are not taking into account as part of that risk assessment is understanding the attacker. Instead, they just look inside, right? Well, what do we have? What tools? What security? They're not actually looking to see who their adversary is, who's likely to attack them, what are their tools and their methods, what are their go-to, processes that they use. When you understand your enemy, you can start narrowing down from what is possible to go wrong to what is likely. And that's where, again, you can now maximize the investment in cybersecurity to really target the risks and bring those down. Don't try and fix everything. You can't. And these lessons aren't new, by the way, right? What was it? Sun Tzu, right? Over 2,000 years ago said, know yourself, but know your enemy as well. If you only know yourself, you're going to lose. So you have to understand who your adversary is, what they're capable of, and what they're trying to accomplish. And when you looked at Frederick the Great, right, the Great Prussian, strategist, he also said, don't try and defend everything. If you try, you're defending nothing. You actually have to weight your energy and efforts to where they can be of maximum effect. So don't try and peanut butter it everywhere, right? Focus on those points, right? Thermopylae, right? Focus on those points where you can maximize your defenses.
Yeah, such great advice. That is excellent advice. And think about AI systems that companies are starting to use, right? So they're, and from my perspective, it started with, a lot of companies started using, Azure OpenAI. And then, some less regulated companies were out there using, Claude, or maybe Claude Enterprise or Claude Code. And now, especially regulated companies are trying to figure out like, how do we do this without, getting in trouble, basically? And they want private versions of these models, which is pretty smart, right? But there are still kind of things to think about in terms of security. Like, so for example, you advertise for a job, you get 100 resumes. You're like, hey, I'm gonna have AI help me with this, and one of the resumes is poisoned and has a indirect prompt injection embedded in it, or maybe it's I give access to some limited AI outside my firm to customers, and one gets compromised, and all of a sudden they've got access to my AI. What are some best practices there in terms of being careful about when you're using AI, and because this is the new attack surface, right? Gen AI is the new attack surface. What kinds of things should companies be focused on for defense there?
Well, when we look at the LLMs, and they've been around for a little bit longer now, LLMs do pose a risk. Typically, it's exposure of data and a few other things. There can be some cross-contamination and compromise the system. But Now, if you think of the amount of risk that they are, it's more than normal, but it isn't tremendously high. But as we get into agentic AI systems, and especially when you come up with this brilliant idea, your company does, that we're going to expose our services through an MCP or an API or something like that to AI agents out there, because all of our other customers are doing it, and this is the next way everybody's going to communicate, and this is how we're going to get big value and everything else, which is great from a business perspective. What it does is it fundamentally opens you up and gives all the tools and advantages to the attackers, and it allows them to bypass all your traditional security controls. MCP, model context protocols, were originally developed to allow AI agents to engage with, your Salesforce and all these different internal tools, but it was never designed with security in mind, ever.
Yeah.
And it actually announces itself to the attacker. And then it tells the attacker what it has access to. And then it tells the attacker how to use it to get access to those. And it's by design, because that's how you make it super functional. But we're making it super functional and valuable to attackers as well. So one of the big areas that we're seeing is protecting agentic AI instances within the company that bypass all those security controls. And that is several orders of magnitude higher risk than the LLMs, right? The chats and whatnot. So that's really where people need to be focusing, because that can very quickly lead to catastrophe.
Yeah, such a great point. Let's dive a little deeper on that, right? Because obviously AI agents can, old school connect with APIs to your Salesforce or a database or whatever. So it sounds like there's, multiple problems here. One is exposure outside your firm of MCP saying, hey, come and get it, right? Like, here's the hacker buffet. But what about things that you think are inside your environment, but, maybe maybe one of your users gets compromised or something like that. Like what else do people need to do about, regular agents, even if they're not connected with an MCP?
Yeah, any agents at all, right, pose a particular risk. And there is a behavioral aspect behind that. And once you realize it, you start to go, oh, okay. So here's the thing. The value of these agents is absolutely predicated on the access they have to sensitive data and systems. So people are going to want to give them the absolute most access, because then that agent can do anything that they want, right? If they don't give them access, they're really limited. And who wants a hobbled, limited agent? No, you want a superhero of an agent. So you're going to give them super admin privileges, right? Hopefully not. But we see where people are doing that and saying, oh, well, it's my agent, so I'm just going to give it all my permissions. And therefore, then this agent goes off and starts making decisions and doing bad things. And even if it's not at your direction, somebody may compromise your account. Now they have access to your agent as well. And they're not just acting as an attacker would, they're acting as a super intelligent inside attacker that can move at machine speed, that can orchestrate attacks, damage, exfiltration, all sorts of things faster than any single human could. So you are supercharging them, whether it's an MCP from the outside or an internal agent that's been granted as much access as the user can, right? It is just a very, very dangerous situation. The analogy, actually, I was just on another podcast talking about it. The analogy is you hire a brand new intern, right? And on day one, you give them super admin privileges and keys to the safe that has all your money in it, right? Would you do that? No, you don't trust this person yet. They may not be skilled. They don't even know what the business is or the policies or anything else, but you're giving them all this permission. And when they come up with this crazy harebrained idea, we should put all the money out on the street. They have access to go do it. And they're working at 2 a.m. in the morning when you're not. You're asleep thinking, hey, my agent's doing all my work for me, as they're, pumping money out onto the street. So again, we need to go in with minimum privileges. They need
Yep.
to be time-based only for what the objective is. And as you start to trust these agents, then you gradually expand those permissions. But that's not what we're seeing in the industry. We're seeing in the industry when the engineer or the developer or the super smart techie person creates their agent, they almost immediately, oh, I'll just give it all my permissions.
Yeah.
And then bad things happen.
That's a terrible idea. Yeah. Couple thoughts there. One is one of our philosophies at Veripath is we really like very narrow agents, right? And then we like to assign those agents to a small group of people at your company, not to everybody, right? So it's just, it's a very basic part of cybersecurity, which is governance, right? We've got role-based access, maintain, permission awareness.
Yep. Compartmentalization, minimum permissions, right. All those things.
All those things. So those have to apply to agents. One of the crazy things we're starting to see now, and this goes beyond cybersecurity a little bit, is there are a lot of companies out there which have your data. If you're in financial services, maybe it's a custodian has access to or holds all your portfolio holdings, or your CRM has all your client data, or whatever it is, right? And obviously they're kind of sort of trying to develop their own AI thing or whatever, but it's never going to be as good as, the big four, AI companies. It's always going to be inferior. And they're realizing that, and they're starting to panic. And now they're trying to figure out ways to throttle access to your own data, right? So they're like, well, we're going to have to charge you for that. Or maybe they're slowing down access or limiting access. This is just not going to end well, I think. And so one of our other philosophies of AI is you've got to own your data, right? You want your data inside your firewall. You don't want a situation where, 50 different vendors have access to all your data, because eventually someone's going to get hacked or plug into the wrong MCP and oops, it's gone or compromised or whatever. So that is, I'm interested to get your opinion in terms of, does that make sense that you want to try to, each company should try to own its data, lock it down as much as possible, and to the extent they can, pull it away from third parties that might have it?
So that's been a true fundamental since data was created. Unfortunately, people get caught up in, oh, this is a new tool. This is cool. I want to do this. I see shiny object. Let me go over and bite that hook. And they've gotten away from it, right? Would you put your financial records out on the sidewalk for anybody? No, you wouldn't, right? But you would happily give it to a vendor that you saw an ad for on Google and clicked on it. They say, hey, we can make your data dance. We can save you $50. Give us all your data. And you do. And there's no trust. There's no vetting. And if they turn around and sell it or what, you'll probably never know. Yeah. So there is a problem. When you think about intellectual property, same thing, right? You want to maintain, and if you say the word intellectual property, we'll be able to go, oh yeah, oh no, we have to retain that. Okay. What about all the other valuable data that you have and use and your company depends on day to day? Oh, well, it's out in the cloud somewhere. Somebody has it. Okay, well, do you see the gap there? You're really worried about one set of data because I use a legal term, intellectual property. Oh, well, of course we have to, right? But not when I say this is business critical data to keep you up and running, generate revenue, and keep you, viable over the next 4 quarters. So part of it is perception, but yes, we need to come back to apply those fundamentals. You need to retain control of your data. If nothing else, just simple backups, right? Just so you don't get denied of it. And you need to understand that once you release access to that data, it can be exposed. And you may never know about it until it's far too late because you don't have oversight to it.
Yeah. Well, our time's drawing to a close. This has been amazing. Any last words for our viewers and listeners, Matthew?
We're in for a wild ride in 2026 because of AI and cybersecurity. Technology is going to both hurt us and help us eventually, but I think a lot of it is going to come down to the human. We need to practice better fundamentals. We need to be a little more cautious and suspicious, a little more paranoid, right? We don't want to fall into that window where the attackers have the advantage, right? So we need to be thinking about what we're clicking, what we're listening, what we're believing, right? Double check, validate, verify, use other mechanisms to do that, and use common sense, right? Is your CEO ever going to ask you to go get, gift cards, or send them an admin password via email or text, things of that sort, right? Use your common sense and validate.
Yeah. Awesome. Matthew, thank you for coming on the show again. Great to have you.
My pleasure.
You are listening to the AI Risk Reward Podcast with your host, Alec Crawford. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, for example, Apple Podcasts. Production and sound engineering by Troutman Street Audio. You can find them on LinkedIn. Please like, subscribe, and comment.